Evelyn had always believed that dreams were nothing more than reflections, mirrors polished by memory, dusted by desire, and lit faintly by the dim glow of forgotten thoughts. But that was before she began seeing him, before the monsoon of strange nights when shadows curled around her window with familiarity, before she learned to fear the softness of twilight because it meant he would come again. Alistair. She didn't know his name at first. She only knew his presence, quiet, effortless, and impossibly real. Too real. Each night, his silhouette stepped out from the haze of her dreams, with the elegance of someone who belonged there long before she arrived. He spoke little, but the silence between his words carried entire worlds. And somewhere between the echoes of midnight and dawn, Evelyn fell in love with a man who existed nowhere except in the vast cathedral of her dreams. But today, on a morning washed with pale sunlight, she woke startled, her breath tangled in a gasp. For the first time in all the nights she had seen him, she felt something she had never felt before. His touch, not imagined, not memory, a real warmth lingering on her palm, like the afterglow of holding another human hand. Her heart hammered beneath her ribs. It made no sense. Dreams didn't leave fingerprints. She sat up, pushing away the soft blanket and trying to steady her breathing. Her room, painted in quiet shades of lavender and white, looked the same as it always did, peaceful, ordinary. Nothing in it hinted at the strange presence that haunted her nights. And yet, there was the warmth, faint but undeniable, blooming in her hand. She closed her fingers around it instinctively, as if trying to hold on to something slipping away. "Who are you?" she whispered to the empty room. But she already knew the answer, didn't she? He was the stranger who walked only where dreams wandered, the one she had never seen in daylight, the one whose face she could describe better than her own reflection. Alistair. Her day unfolded slowly, wrapped in an unsettling calm. At work, she found herself drifting. She stared at the computer screen, the glowing emails dissolving into soft shapes. Her colleagues spoke, laughed, sipped coffee, but everything around her felt distant, as if someone had drawn a thin veil between her and the rest of the world. She could think of only one thing. Why had his touch felt real? That evening, as the sun sank behind tall city buildings, painting the windows amber, Evelyn stepped out into the cooling air. She hugged her coat a little tighter around her shoulders. Something in the wind felt different tonight, heavier, filled with a strange expectation. Maybe she imagined it. Or maybe she didn't, because when she reached the familiar turn toward her apartment building, she froze. Across the street, standing beneath the flickering street lamp, was a silhouette, tall, still, unmistakable. Her breath stopped. It couldn't be him. Dreams did not bleed into daylight. Men made of imagination did not stand under city lights. Yet the figure's posture, the quiet strength in the way he stood, the angle of his shoulders, she had seen it 100 times in dreams where he waited for her. Her pulse quickened, fear and longing twisted together. The figure lifted his head, as if sensing her from across the street. But before she could see his face, a bus roared past, breaking her line of sight. When it moved on, he was gone. Only the lamplight flickered in his place, swaying like the afterimage of someone who had never been there. Evelyn's knees trembled. Had she imagined him? Had exhaustion blurred reality? Or was something far more impossible unfolding? She didn't know, but she knew this much. Tonight, when she closed her eyes, he would be waiting. And this time, the dream would not be just a dream. At night, the city felt strangely hushed, as if something unseen had pressed a quiet finger against the lips of the world. Even the breeze that usually rattled the balcony railings of Evelyn's fourth-floor apartment seemed to pause, holding its breath with her. She tried to busy herself, boiling water for tea, rearranging the books on her shelf, watering the dying plant she never remembered buying. But everything felt mechanical, distant, useless. Her mind kept circling back to the same impossible thought. I saw him, in daylight. And though she had wanted to dismiss it, the tremble in her hands betrayed her fear. And something else, a deeper ache, a longing she did not dare name. When she finally stood before her bedroom mirror, she barely recognized herself. Her eyes held a strange glow, as if some hidden part of her had been awakened. "Get a grip, Evelyn," she whispered, but her reflection only stared back with quiet defiance. She changed into her nightclothes slowly, each gesture deliberate, weighted with anticipation. The room felt uncomfortably alive. Shadows breathed across the walls. The faintest hum vibrated in the corners, too delicate to be real. She turned off the lamp and slipped beneath the covers. Almost immediately, the world began to dissolve. The line between waking and dreaming blurred, melted, vanished, as if the night had been waiting only for her eyes to close. At first, there was only quiet, a deep, velvety silence, thick as fog. Then came the light, soft, pale, shimmering, pouring through the darkness like water through silk. It gathered around her, wrapping her in a delicate warmth. Evelyn stepped forward, though she didn't remember choosing to move. And there he was, Alistair, standing at the edge of a vast dreamscape that pulsed faintly with muted colors, as though the world had been painted in moonlit watercolor. The sand beneath his feet glowed faintly gold. The air carried the scent of rain-soaked petals and old memories. He looked exactly as she remembered him, tall, graceful, composed, but there was something different tonight. He seemed more real, more solid. His shadow fell naturally along the glowing ground. Evelyn felt her breath catch. Her heart stumbled. She wanted to speak, but the words tangled in her throat. Alistair stepped toward her. The soft dream sand shifted under his feet. "Evelyn," he said, her name falling from his lips like a familiar melody, as if he had spoken it many times before. His voice carried a strange warmth, a quiet sorrow, a depth she could not understand. "You came," she whispered, though she wasn't sure whether she meant tonight or always. A faint smile touched the corner of his mouth. "I always do." The way he said it sent a shiver through her, not of fear, but recognition, as though some forgotten part of her remembered him, remembered this, remembered nights they had never lived. "Why did I see you today?" she blurted, before she could stop herself. "In the real world, under the street lamp." He paused, for a moment. Something flickered in his eyes, surprise perhaps, or concern. "That wasn't meant to happen," he murmured. The dream wind brushed past them, carrying fragments of shimmering particles through the air. Evelyn watched them drift and dissolve. "Who are you, Alistair?" she asked softly. He didn't answer at first. Instead, he stepped closer, so close she could see the faint glow along the edges of his irises, the way the dreamlight clung to his form like a second skin. His presence steadied her pulse and disrupted it at the same time. "I am," he hesitated. A rare uncertainty moved through his otherwise calm features. "Someone who shouldn't exist beyond this." His fingers brushed hers, barely, lightly, and the world shifted as if the dream itself inhaled sharply. A warm rush surged through her arm. She felt the same invisible electricity that had lingered on her palm that morning. She pulled her hand back instinctively, startled. That shouldn't be possible," she stammered. "I know," he said quietly. Evelyn met his gaze, deep, luminous, impossibly familiar. "But why me?" she asked. "Why my dreams?" Alistair looked away then, toward the glowing horizon where the colors of the dream blended into a soft haze. His voice, when it came, was barely above a whisper. "Because you dreamed of me first." Her breath caught. What?" He turned back to her, eyes steady, gentle, unbearably sincere. "Evelyn, you brought me here." The dream trembled around them, a soft ripple, like the surface of water disturbed by a single drop. She stared at him, unable to speak, unable to think. What did that mean? How could that be true? How could she create someone so vivid, so warm, so heartbreakingly real? Before she could form another question, the dream around them began to dim, the edges pulling away like curtains retreating at dawn. Alistair stepped back. "No, wait," Evelyn reached out, but the world was dissolving. "Tonight is ending," he said, his voice fading with the light. "But remember this, your dreaming is more powerful than you know." "Alistair!" Her voice echoed into the collapsing landscape, but he was already gone. And when Evelyn opened her eyes in the pale quiet of morning, she found herself clutching her own hand, the same hand he had touched, still warm. Morning drifted into Evelyn's apartment like a hesitant guest, quiet, pale, and strangely fragile. The thin curtains swayed slightly as the early breeze slipped in, stirring the dust motes that floated in the golden light. For a long moment, she simply lay still, staring at the ceiling as if expecting the dream to continue there. It didn't. Instead, she felt the unmistakable weight of reality settling over her. But this morning, even reality seemed altered, softened around the edges, blurred by something she couldn't name. She lifted her hand slowly, the one he had touched, and watched her fingers close gently around nothing. Yet the warmth lingered, faint and delicate, like the fading memory of a whispered promise. Her heart fluttered unsteadily. "You brought me here." That's what he'd said. The words echoed again in her mind, soft but persistent, like waves breaking gently on distant shores. It didn't make sense. Dreams didn't speak in riddles. Dreams faded, dissolved, disappeared. But Alistair's presence carried a solidity that defied all reason. She rose from bed, her movements languid, dazed. The floor was cold beneath her feet, grounding her in a world she no longer trusted completely. A kettle hissed quietly in the kitchen as she poured water into it. But even that familiar sound felt hollow. This was the strange part. She wasn't frightened. If anything, a fragile anticipation shimmered beneath her skin. A sense of something beginning, though she didn't yet understand what. Later, on her way to work, she caught herself glancing at every reflective surface, shop windows, car doors, even puddles on the pavement, as if she expected him to appear behind her, a second shadow moving with impossible grace. But he didn't. Still, the memory of the silhouette beneath the street lamp the previous night clung to her thoughts. The more she tried to convince herself it had been a trick of the light, the more certain she became that it wasn't. Someone doesn't become vivid in dreams unless they are real somewhere. It was an absurd thought, and yet, she couldn't let it go. Evelyn's office building loomed ahead, all reflective glass and sharp steel angles that seemed too harsh for the softness she felt within. She entered the lobby, blending into the morning rush, but her mind was elsewhere, wandering through fragments of dream sand and glowing horizons. At her desk, she opened her laptop but stared blankly at the screen. Her fingertips hovered over a key. "Long night?" came a familiar voice. Evelyn blinked and turned toward her coworker, Clara, who stood holding a steaming cup of coffee, her expression curious but kind. Clara had a way of observing people with gentle sincerity, something that made Evelyn wish she could confide in her. But how could she? "Something like that," Evelyn murmured. Clara tilted her head. "You seem different today. Light somehow. Or distracted. Or both." Evelyn managed a faint smile. "Maybe just tired." But Clara didn't look convinced. She opened her mouth, perhaps to ask more, but someone called her name from across the room, and she walked away, leaving Evelyn alone with her swirling thoughts. The hours passed in a strange haze. Words on her screen blurred into shapes. Emails slid unanswered into digital piles. She kept touching her hand, unconsciously, as if checking that the warmth hadn't vanished entirely. By the time evening arrived once more, the sky wore a soft violet hue. Clouds drifted lazily across the horizon, catching the last gold of the fading sun. Evelyn wrapped her scarf around her neck and stepped into the gentle dusk. The city breathed differently at this hour, slow, drowsy, tinged with secrets. The soft hum of traffic created a background murmur that felt almost melodic. As she walked, she felt it again, a subtle shift in the air, like the world turning its head toward her. Her heart quickened. What if he appeared again? What if the dreams were spilling over, thread by fragile thread, weaving themselves into the waking world? She slowed as she neared the street lamp, the one beneath which she had seen him the night before. Her breath caught. The lamp flickered softly, casting a warm glow across the pavement. A faint breeze stirred her hair, but this time, no silhouette waited. And yet, the emptiness felt intentional, as though the space itself held his echo, as though he had just been there a moment before she arrived. A delicate chill traced down her spine. Not fear, recognition. She glanced upward. The sky was darkening, cradling the first stars of night. A thought whispered through her mind. Dreams begin where daylight ends. He will come. Her steps quickened as she made her way home. An undeniable urgency building within her. She didn't know what the night would show her, but she knew she would not resist it. She was already slipping into Alistair's world. That night, Evelyn stood at her bedroom window, watching the city lights flicker like distant constellations. The stillness around her felt charged, anticipatory. She closed her eyes briefly, allowing the cool glass beneath her fingers to steady her breath. Then, with a quiet resolve, she turned away from the window and lay down on her bed. Sleep approached swiftly, not as an escape, but as an invitation. The edges of the room softened, melted, until the boundary between worlds dissolved again. And there, in the shimmering dreamscape, Alistair waited. This time, he wasn't distant. He wasn't fading. He was standing close enough for her to see the subtle glow etched along his cheekbone, the soft curl of hair brushing his forehead, the quiet intensity in his eyes. "You returned," he said gently. Evelyn met his gaze with a mixture of awe and longing she could no longer hide. "I had no choice," she whispered. "You were waiting." Alistair stepped closer, the dreamlight rising around him like a gentle tide. "There is something you must know," he murmured. "Something that begins with you and ends somewhere neither of us have been." Her breath trembled. "Tell me." But before he could answer, the dream rippled, as though another presence had stepped into their world, and Evelyn realized with a deep, instinctive certainty this night would not end the way any of the others had. Something had changed, something had awakened, and the story of her dreams had only just begun. For the next few nights, something began to change, not in Evelyn's dreams alone, but in her waking hours, in the delicate space between thought and breath, between certainty and longing. The world outside continued with its usual indifference. Buses hissed along crowded roads, cafes clattered with morning conversations, office keys clicked against glass desks. But Evelyn felt herself drifting gently away from that rhythm, as though she were living a half step to the side of everyone else. Her body remained in the city, her heart somewhere else entirely. And always, always, she felt him near, not visibly, not tangibly, but in quiet ways. In the way street lamps flickered whenever she walked beneath them. In the hush that settled whenever she closed her eyes, even briefly. In the warmth that bloomed in her hand when she wasn't thinking about it. In the faint sensation of being watched, not with menace, but with longing. Sometimes she caught herself whispering his name under her breath. Alistair. It was absurd. It was impossible. It was inevitable. On the fourth morning after the dream, where he first touched her, Evelyn awoke abruptly. Her room was filled with a strange half-light, neither dawn nor night, but something softer, an in-between shade like diluted gold. She blinked, disoriented. This was wrong. Her alarm hadn't rung. The city outside wasn't making any sound, and the air felt thick, as though her room had been wrapped in velvet. When she sat up, she realized she wasn't fully awake, and she wasn't dreaming either. She was somewhere in between. The bed sheets beneath her hands were real, textured, cool. But the light, that impossible shimmering haze, belonged to no morning she had ever seen. Her breath caught when a faint shape began to emerge at the foot of her bed. A silhouette, tall, still, unmoving. Her heart staggered in her chest. "Alistair?" she whispered. The figure stepped forward, and the soft light curved around him, as if welcoming him into being. He looked more solid than the last time she had seen him, less dream and more man. His eyes held a depth that made Evelyn's pulse quiver. "You shouldn't be here," she said, though she didn't know if she meant him or herself. He tilted his head, studying her gently. His expression held that same quiet sadness she had noticed in her dreams. A sorrow that felt ancient, worn, familiar. "This is a fragile place," he said softly, "where your waking world touches mine." She swallowed. "What does that mean?" "It means," he murmured, stepping closer, "that the boundary is thinning." A delicate shiver ran through her. "Because of me?" The words escaped her before she could stop them. Alistair's gaze softened. "Because of us." The room trembled faintly, like a sigh passing through the walls. A pulse of light flickered at the edges of Evelyn's vision. "But why?" she asked. "How is this possible?" He lifted a hand, slowly, carefully, as if touching her would risk shattering something delicate. When his fingers brushed her cheek, the entire room brightened, a soft explosion of gold and pale pink light, as though reality itself exhaled at their contact. Evelyn gasped, breath caught between shock and surrender. "You're becoming real," she whispered. A faint, wistful smile touched his lips. "No," he said gently, sorrow threading his voice. "You are drifting toward me." The words sank into her heart like a stone into deep water. She felt it then, the slow pulling sensation she had been ignoring for days, the way her world blurred at the edges, the way her dreams felt too heavy, too full of meaning. "I don't understand," she breathed, her voice trembling. "You will," he said quietly, "in time." The light around them began to shift, thinning like mist under sunlight. Already fading. "Alistair, don't go. Not yet." "I never go," he replied. "You simply wake. Then stay until I do." He stepped one fraction closer, his forehead brushing hers for the briefest moment. "Evelyn," he whispered, "when the world begins to blur, follow the pull. It is leading you somewhere you have already known." And just like that, the light fractured, the silhouette dissolved, and the morning snapped into sharp reality. The alarm blared, cars honked outside. The room was ordinary again. Except Evelyn was not. She sat frozen on the edge of her bed, tears spilling down her cheeks without her understanding why. Something was happening, not to her, but because of her. And for the first time since all of this began, she felt afraid, not of him, never of him, but of the pieces of her world quietly falling out of place. City moved around Evelyn as if she were walking through a memory. Intact in form, fragile in substance. Every sound felt distant, softened by an invisible veil. Conversations passed her like echoes. Footsteps behind her dissolved before she could turn. Even the wind brushing past her cheek felt thinner, as though it were made of something less certain than air. And beneath it all, one truth pulsed steadily. She was changing. Or perhaps the world around her was. For the first time, Evelyn wondered if reality was not as firmly rooted as she had always believed. She found herself touching walls, railings, the cold metal of her apartment keys, needing to remind herself what solid meant. The dream had followed her. No, Alistair had followed her, into the fragile space between waking and sleep. Her chest tightened as she remembered the way his hand had brushed her cheek, how light exploded across her vision, how her heart had stumbled into an aching, impossible recognition. She couldn't forget the warmth of that touch. It was still there, like the fading imprint of light behind closed eyes. And his voice, "You are drifting toward me." She didn't understand it, but she couldn't deny it. That evening, the air felt charged again. Clouds gathered low over the rooftops, glowing faintly with the city's lights. Evelyn stood at her window, fingers pressed against the cool glass, watching the world move beneath her, unaware of the strange unraveling happening inside one of its quiet apartments. She whispered his name into the empty room. "Alistair." The moment the name left her lips, a soft pulse rippled through the air, barely perceptible, like a delicate vibration. She froze, breath caught. Had she imagined it? But then it came again, a subtle shift, a thinning of space, a soft bending of light near the wardrobe, as if the air itself hesitated. Evelyn stepped back sharply, heart hammering. The room settled, the light steadied. Nothing more happened, not yet. She exhaled shakily, pressing a hand against her chest. An hour later, she lay in bed, the city's muffled hum drifting through the window. Sleep felt close, too close. It gathered around her like a tide rising to meet the shore, pulling gently, insistently. She gave into it, and the moment she did, the world shattered, not violently, but softly, like petals falling apart in slow motion. The dream formed around her with an ease she no longer questioned. Tonight, the dreamscape was different, vast, pale, and luminous, like a world carved from moonstone. Tall pillars of soft, glowing marble rose from the ground, disappearing into mist. A wide, shimmering floor stretched beneath her feet, smooth as glass, but warm to the touch. The air smelled faintly of rain on old stone, And there, standing beneath one of the towering arches, was Alistair. He didn't move at first, as though waiting for her to recognize him all over again. Its presence felt heavier tonight, more substantial. His shadow was long, cast by a soft, unseen light. She took a slow step toward him. "You came," she whispered. He exhaled softly, a breath that carried relief. "You were calling," he replied. Her eyes widened. "I didn't." "You don't need to speak aloud," he said gently. "You only need to feel." Evelyn's breath trembled, because it was true. She had felt him, tugging at the edges of her thoughts all evening, a quiet pull she didn't understand. "Alistair," she began, her voice unsteady, "what is this place?" His gaze drifted upward, toward the pillars dissolving into mist. "This is the space between," he said, "where neither your world nor mine has full claim." She frowned softly. "Then how am I here?" He stepped closer, and the air shimmered faintly around them. "Because you are no longer anchored entirely to your world," he said, "and because I am no longer confined to mine." A chill, not of fear, but of awe, moved through her. "What does that mean for us?" she whispered. He reached out, not touching her, but near enough that she felt the warmth of his hand brush the air around her skin. "It means our worlds are beginning to overlap," he said. "It means the boundary between dreaming and waking grows weaker each time you seek me." Her pulse quickened. She swallowed. "Is that dangerous? For you?" He hesitated, a rare, almost painful silence. "Yes." Her breath hitched. "And for you?" His eyes softened, dark with something unspoken. "For me," he murmured, "it is inevitable." A tremor rippled across the marble floor, gentle but noticeable. The pillars flickered, fading in and out like lanterns in fog. Evelyn stepped closer, instinctively reaching for him. "What's happening?" "The worlds are adjusting," he said quietly. They were not meant to touch. Another ripple passed beneath their feet, softer this time, like a sigh. "But they will," he added, his voice low, "because of us." Evelyn's heart ached at the tenderness in those words. "Alistair," she whispered, "I don't want this to stop." His eyes closed briefly, as if her words cut deeper than she intended. "And that," he said softly, "is exactly why it cannot continue this way." "Is that dangerous? For you?" He hesitated, a rare, almost painful silence. "Yes." Her breath hitched. "And for you?" His eyes softened, dark with something unspoken. "For me," he murmured, "it is inevitable." A tremor rippled across the marble floor, gentle but noticeable. The pillars flickered, fading in and out like lanterns in fog. Evelyn stepped closer, instinctively reaching for him. "What's happening?" "The worlds are adjusting," he said quietly. They were not meant to touch. Another ripple passed beneath their feet, softer this time, like a sigh. "But they will," he added, his voice low, "because of us." Evelyn's heart ached at the tenderness in those words. "Alistair," she whispered, "I don't want this to stop." His eyes closed briefly, as if her words cut deeper than she intended. "And that," he said softly, "is exactly why it cannot continue this way." Before she could answer, the dreamscape shifted again, the marble floor trembling like water under wind, the mist thickening, the arches dissolving into pale light. Alistair's form flickered, just for a moment, as though being pulled back by a force stronger than himself. "No!" Evelyn stepped forward, reaching for him. He caught her wrist in a swift, warm grasp, the most solid he had ever felt. His voice, when he spoke, carried urgency and sorrow in equal measure. "Evelyn, You must understand this before we go any further." She stared into his eyes, breathless. Understand what? He held her wrist a moment longer, then released it slowly, gently, painfully. "That you did not simply dream me into existence." The dream collapsed around her. Darkness surged, light fractured. Her heart lurched. And then, nothing, only silence, and the echo of his last words, "I found you first." The next morning, Evelyn woke with the echo of Alistair's final words coiled inside her mind. "I found you first." They felt too heavy to belong to a dream, too intentional, too carefully spoken. She sat upright, breath trembling, the blanket pooling around her waist. Her apartment shimmered faintly in the early light, as though the edges of her world were still soft from the dream. Found me first? But how? When? The thought clung to her ribs, like ivy wrapping around stone. As she moved through her morning routine, her reflection in the mirror startled her. Her eyes looked brighter, yes, but also older. Not aged, but aware, as if some hidden door inside her had creaked open in the night, revealing a truth she hadn't known she was searching for. By the time she stepped out of her building, the sky was swollen with clouds. The air held a faint metallic tang, a storm waiting for its cue. Evelyn wrapped her coat tighter. Though the chill she felt didn't come from there, it came from the way the world seemed to tilt subtly around her. Objects felt too sharp or too soft. Sounds echoed a little too long. Colors blurred at the edges. Dream and reality were beginning to bleed together. At work, she noticed it again. The moment she sat down, her computer flickered. Just once, before the screen steadied. A file she hadn't opened slid open across the desktop. A blank document, cursor blinking at the top as if waiting. Evelyn frowned and reached to close it. But before her hand touched the trackpad, letters began to appear on the screen. Slowly, softly, one by one, as if typed by an invisible hand. Her breath froze. The words formed with delicate precision. "You are drifting." Evelyn's blood ran cold. She jerked back from the desk, heart beating in erratic pulses. Clara glanced over. "Everything okay?" Evelyn forced a stiff smile. "Just static glitch. I'll restart it." Before Clara could say more, Evelyn slammed the laptop shut with trembling hands. She pushed back from her chair and stood abruptly, mumbling something about air, needing air. She slipped into the hallway, breathing hard. Glitch? No, that wasn't a glitch. That was something reaching for her. Something from the other side. Something that knew how to speak to her, even here. She pressed her palms to her eyes, trying to think, trying to breathe. But all she could hear was the soft echo of his voice from the dream. The boundaries thinning. Was this what he meant? Her phone buzzed. She flinched so hard it nearly slipped from her hands. With a shaky exhale, she unlocked it. A notification lit the screen, but not from any app she recognized. Just a single line of text, glowing faintly, "I told you." Her heart stuttered. The message vanished, gone, no trace. She stared at the empty screen, a cold wave rolling down her spine. This was no longer a matter of dreams. This was intrusion, bleed-through, a merging of worlds she had no control over. The hallway lights flickered, softly, almost politely. This time, Evelyn whispered the truth aloud, barely breathing it. "Alistair?" And the lights steadied, not flickering, not buzzing, steady, as if answering her. That evening, Evelyn barely remembered walking home. Her mind was a whirl of trembling questions. How could he reach her phone, her computer, her waking world? Who or what was Alistair beyond her dreams? When she finally reached her apartment and closed the door behind her, she felt a wave of warmth settle around her shoulders, as if the room were relieved she had returned. She dropped her keys. They clattered loudly on the floor. Evelyn froze. There, in the corner of the room where the shadows thickened, stood a shape, not solid, not fully formed, but unmistakably human. Her breath hitched. The silhouette stepped forward. Light wrapped around it, revealing, no, not revealing, suggesting, a figure made of soft, shimmering outlines, like someone seen through a curtain of rain. Evelyn whispered his name, barely audible. Alistair. The figure responded without moving, without speaking. It responded with presence. A warmth blooming in her chest, a pull in her mind, a recognition too deep to deny. And then, with a slow dissolving motion, like mist retreating from dawn, the shape began to fade. "No, wait!" Her voice cracked, raw with desperation. "Why are you doing this? Why now?" The fading figure answered, not with spoken words, but with a whisper inside her mind. "Because you finally see me." And then he was gone. The room felt suddenly colder, emptier, too real. Evelyn stumbled backward onto her bed, pressing trembling fingers to her lips. He had crossed into her world. Not physically, not fully, but enough. Enough to change everything. Enough to make her understand that what connected them was no accident of dreaming. Something was pulling her out of her world and toward his. And the terrifying truth was, she wanted to go. For 2 days after the shadow formed behind the corner of her room, after the whisper that lived not in the air but in her own mind, Evelyn felt the world shifting beneath her feet. Not violently, not suddenly, but like the slow tilt of a ship drifting off its intended course. She had lived her life in a straight line, predictable workdays, silent evenings, muted conversations, but now everything curved toward one point, Alistair. It was as if every street she walked, every window she passed, every shadow cast by the city lights leaned imperceptibly in his direction. She felt him in the hum of traffic. She felt him in the low sighs of the elevator. She felt him in the fluttering pulse beneath her ribs. And though she tried to tell herself she was slipping into obsession, she knew, deep in the quiet chambers of her heart, that obsession alone could not bend reality. Something else was happening. That night, sleep did not come softly. It came like a tide. One moment, Evelyn lay staring at the faint glow of her bedside lamp. The next, she felt the ground shift, as if the mattress had dissolved into mist. A warm breeze brushed past her cheek, carrying with it the scent of old stone and distant rain. Her eyes opened into a world that felt both familiar and impossibly new. She stood on a narrow bridge, its arch carved from pale stone, glowing faintly beneath a silver sky. Beneath her, a still, glass-like river reflected the ripple of the clouds. The air around her shimmered, and on the far end of the bridge, waiting with the stillness of someone who had been there for a very long time. Alistair. Evelyn's breath caught. Her heart stumbled in its rhythm. He looked different tonight. Not quite sad, not quite whole. Something in his expression held a depth she was afraid to name. "You came," he said, though she felt he already knew she would. Evelyn stepped closer, her voice fragile. "I didn't choose to. It just pulled me." "That pull is the beginning," he murmured, gaze drifting to the shimmering horizon. "The beginning of remembering." Her pulse quickened. "Remembering what?" she asked. He turned to her fully then, and for the first time since she had known him, in dreams, In echoes, in the thin spaces between worlds, there was a tremor in his composure. "Evelyn," he said softly, "you asked how I found you." She nodded. Her throat tightened. Yes, Alistair looked past her shoulder, as though trying to see a memory so distant it barely clung to existence. "The answer begins here," he whispered, "on this bridge." His hand lifted, hesitant, warm, trembling with something she had never seen in him before. "When you cross it," he said, "you don't just enter my world. You enter the first memory we ever shared." Her breath trembled. "We've met before?" she whispered. Alistair closed the distance between them. His eyes, soft, luminous, held hers with aching sincerity. "Yes," he said, "long before you dreamed of me." Evelyn's heart thundered in her chest. "How?" she breathed. Alistair stepped to the edge of the bridge, his silhouette outlined by the soft silver sky. "Because you once crossed into a dream that wasn't yours," he whispered, "and I was waiting on the other side." The world around them shifted, the clouds trembling, the water darkening, the air tightening like the inhale before a storm. Evelyn felt her pulse race. Her palms grew cold. "I don't remember that," she whispered. "You wouldn't," he said. "You are too young, and the dream world only keeps what it chooses." She stared at him, breathless. "And why do I remember you now?" Alistair looked down at his hands, as if afraid of the truth they carried. "Because," he said, voice almost breaking, "our worlds were never meant to touch again. But you called for something in your sleep that night. A plea, a longing, a grief I couldn't ignore." He lifted his gaze, and the raw vulnerability in it fractured something deep inside her. "And when I found you," he whispered, "I never forgot." The bridge beneath them trembled, a warning, perhaps, or an invitation. Evelyn's breath hitched in her throat. "Alistair, what exactly did you find?" He reached out, his hand hovering inches from her cheek, the air between them glowing faintly. "A soul searching for something it lost before it even had a name." A shiver coursed through her. The dream river stilled, the sky dimmed, the bridge pulsed with light beneath her feet. "And what did I lose?" she whispered. Alistair leaned in, close enough for her to see the shimmer of memory flickering in his eyes. "That," he said, "you will only see once you cross." Not commanding, not demanding, inviting. The silver wind wrapped around them like threads of fate intertwining. Evelyn stared at his hand and knew that taking it would change everything. But she also knew that not taking it would leave half her heart forever suspended between two worlds. Slowly, trembling, she placed her hand in his. The moment she touched him, the dream exploded into light. Light exploded around Evelyn the moment her hand touched Alistair's. Not harsh light, but soft, molten, fluid light, as if 1,000 fireflies had risen from the earth at once. The dream world dissolved into a whirl of pale gold and silver mist, and Evelyn felt herself falling, never violently, never in fear, but gently, like a leaf drifting downward through warm air. The bridge vanished. The pillars vanished. Even the river's reflection melted into nothingness. When the world stilled, she found herself standing in a place that didn't feel like a dream at all. It felt like memory. A narrow path wound through towering trees, their branches bending inward to form an archway of trembling leaves. Moonlight filtered through the canopy, casting soft ropes of silver across the moss-covered ground. The air was thick with the scent of eucalyptus and something sweeter, like distant jasmine carried on a forgotten wind. Evelyn swallowed hard, I've been here before, she whispered without meaning to. Alistair stood beside her, no longer shimmering, no longer half-lit, but steady, solid, real. He watched her with a kind of quiet intensity she had never seen on him before. Yes, he murmured, you have. Her heart thudded. When? How? I don't remember this place. You wouldn't, he said softly. You came here only once, and you were too young to understand. Too young to know that some dreams are doors. Evelyn turned slowly, letting her fingers brush the bark of a tree. The moment her skin touched it, a rush of warmth traveled through her body, as if the memory of her childhood self had been waiting in the trunk all these years. Alistair, her voice trembled. What is this place really? He inhaled slowly, deep, pained, as though preparing to unearth something buried long ago. This, he said quietly, is where I first saw you. Evelyn froze. Saw me? Her pulse skittered unevenly. I was a child, she whispered. A child who wandered into a dream that was not yours, he said, not meant for mortals to enter. A breeze stirred the branches above them, scattering flecks of light that drifted down like falling stars. You shouldn't have been able to cross, he continued, taking a step closer. But you did, and when you did, you changed everything. Her breath trembled. Her voice felt tight in her throat. What did I change? Alistair's eyes, dark, luminous, devastating, held hers for a long, aching moment. You woke me. The forest responded to his words. A low hum vibrated through the leaves, the ground, the air, as though the world itself remembered. Evelyn stared at him, shaken. You were asleep? He nodded, slowly. In a way you cannot fully understand yet. I existed without form, without memory, without self. A shadow waiting for purpose. And I woke you? She whispered, barely believing it. You didn't mean to, he said, a faint grief softening his voice. You were lost in a fever. Your body slept in your world, but your mind, your dreaming mind, wandered far, searching for calm, for escape, for something gentle enough to hold the ache you carried even then. A tear rolled down her cheek. I don't remember being in pain. You were, he whispered, brushing the tear with the softest motion of air. But it was the kind of pain children hide even from themselves. Evelyn's chest tightened. And when you stumbled into this place, he continued, you reached out in your fear and your longing. And I, who had never been anything before, became someone. His voice softened to a fragile whisper. I became Alistair the moment you spoke my name. Evelyn gasped, tears blurring her vision. But I don't remember naming you. You didn't, he said gently. Not with words. You named me with a feeling. The first feeling I ever understood. The dream forest darkened thin, not with shadow, but with depth, as though memory itself deepened around them. And ever since that night, Alistair murmured, I have carried that feeling. It is how I found you again. It is why I appear only in your dreams. Evelyn's tears fell freely. Alistair, why are you telling me this now? He stepped closer, the air warming between them. Because the boundary is thinning more quickly than I expected, he said, and because you need to know what you awakened before it awakens fully. Evelyn's breath hitched. What does that mean? Alistair looked into her eyes, and for the first time, she saw fear in the beautiful, impossible dream stranger. It means, he whispered, that I am becoming real. The forest went silent, utterly, impossibly silent. Evelyn swayed on her feet. And when I become real, Alistair continued, I will not be the only thing that crosses. A cold wave washed through her. What else is coming? He closed his eyes, voice trembling with a truth he had carried alone for too long. The dream that created me, did not create only me. The ground trembled beneath them. Leaves shivered. The forest grew darker at the edges. Evelyn instinctively reached for Alistair's hand. He caught hers instantly. Warm, solid, grounding. "I will protect you," he said fiercely. "As long as I exist, I will protect you." The trembling stopped, but her heart did not. A dream forest stilled after Alistair's confession. Every leaf seemed to pause in mid-motion, as if even nature held its breath. The quiet was so complete that Evelyn could hear her own heartbeat. Frantic, uncertain, too loud for a place that felt carved from memory. She couldn't look away from Alistair. He stood before her with a steadiness that contradicted the tremor she had seen in his eyes, the kind that revealed truths too heady to voice, too fragile to silence. "Alistair," her voice wavered. "What else crossed over? What else came from my dream?" He didn't answer immediately. Instead, he turned toward the trees, their silhouettes trembling as faint, unnatural shadows whispered along their edges. A low hum vibrated through the air, soft but unsettling, like something stirring in its sleep. "The dream that created me," he said at last, "was never meant to exist in your world. It belonged to a deeper place, a place older than memory." Evelyn felt a cold shiver trace her spine, and when you opened that door long ago, you let in more than light. The forest dimmed, as though a veil of uncertainty fell over it. She took a step back. "What are you saying?" Alistair turned to her, his expression tender but etched with sorrow. "That night, Evelyn, the night you crossed into my realm, you awakened me, yes, but you also awakened something else." A sharp gust of wind tore through the trees, scattering leaves like pieces of shattered glass. Evelyn flinched, instinctively reaching for Alistair. He caught her hand instantly, grounding her. "Don't be afraid," he murmured. "I won't let it reach you." Her breath trembled. "Let what reach me?" His jaw tightened. "The other half." Silence fell with crushing weight. "The other half?" she repeated. Alistair nodded slowly. "When a dream births something, it creates balance. Where there is light, there must be shadow. Where there is longing, there must be void. Where a soul forms—" He paused, voice breaking. "So does its reflection." Evelyn stared at him, pulse hammering. "You mean there's another version of you?" "No." His voice softened to a whisper. "Not of me." The forest darkened further. A distant crack echoed through the trees, low, hollow, as though a massive root had snapped beneath the earth. Evelyn's heart lurched. "Then of who?" she breathed. Alistair closed his eyes. "Of you." The world tilted. Her breath died in her throat. "Of me?" "Yes," he whispered. "When you crossed into the dream realm as a child, the door did not close cleanly. It split something, your innocence, your fear, your longing, and cast a shadow of it into the dream world." A second crack thundered through the forest, closer this time, too close. Alistair pulled her protectively behind him. "And now," he continued, urgency rising in his voice, "now that the boundaries are thinning, that shadow is stirring." Evelyn felt dizzy. "What does it want?" Alistair turned, eyes sharp with a fear she had never seen in him before. "It wants what all shadows want," he whispered, "to replace what cast them." A chill tore through Evelyn, cold and sharp as a blade dipped in winter. "That thing," she whispered, "that version of me, it wants to take my place?" "No," Alistair said quietly. "It wants to erase you so it can exist fully." Her knees weakened, but Alistair's grip steadied her. "Is it dangerous?" she whispered. A long pause, then, softly, painfully, "Yes." The forest responded instantly, shadows writhing at the edges, like ink dissolving in water. Alistair! Evelyn clung to his arm, voice cracking. Why didn't you tell me sooner? Because it wasn't awake, he said, and because I prayed, it would never awaken. A deep, bone-shaking thud rolled through the earth beneath them, echoing like something enormous shifting in the dark. But it has awakened now, he said quietly, and it knows you are close. Evelyn's voice trembled. What does it look like? Alistair hesitated, and that hesitation told her everything. You won't recognize it at first, he whispered. It will not come as you expect. Her heart pounded harder. But when you see it, you will know. The forest suddenly fell silent again. Unnaturally, violently silent, as though the world were holding its breath in dread. Alistair's hand tightened around hers. We must go, he said urgently. It's near. Evelyn looked around, fear prickling her skin like cold needles. She could feel it now, a presence. Faint, but creeping, watching them from the shifting dark beyond the trees. Where do we go? She whispered. Alistair turned to her with fierce determination. Forward, he said, toward the memory that began everything. He stepped ahead, pulling her gently. Only there, he added, can you understand what it truly wants. Behind them, something moved, slowly, softly, impossibly close. Evelyn's breath caught. Alistair pulled her faster. Don't look back, he whispered. Not yet. But even without turning, Evelyn felt it. A second heartbeat in the dark. They moved quickly through the dream forest, though Evelyn could not tell whether her feet touched earth or light. The trees blurred around them in long strokes of silver and dark green, as though the painting of a memory had been smudged by an unseen hand. Alistair did not let go of her hand. His grip was firm, warm, and strangely mortal, not like a dream, not like a thought, but like flesh and blood. Each time her fingers tightened around his, the world around them steadied. Just slightly, but behind them, something followed. Not footsteps, not breath, a presence, a cold, creeping pressure, like eyes made of shadow, watching her spine. Alistair, Evelyn whispered, struggling to keep her voice steady. Can you feel it? Yes, he said, without turning. It's closer than I hoped. Her heart lurched. Why won't you look at it? Because looking at a shadow, he murmured, is how you give it shape. A shiver sliced through her. The forest thickened, branches twisting into narrow arcs that forced them closer together. The air smelled darker now, like soil soaked in old rain, like a forgotten corner of the world, where light rarely lingered. Where are we going? She asked. To the first memory, Alistair said. The place where you crossed when you were young. The place that binds us. And binds it, she whispered. He hesitated. Yes. A soft, faint sound fluttered behind them. Not a growl, not a whisper, but something far more terrifying in its simplicity. A breath. Hers. Evelyn froze mid-step. Alistair, she whispered, voice cracking. It sounded like me. Keep walking, he urged, pulling her forward. Don't turn, not yet. But why does it sound like me? Because it is you, he said quietly. A version of you born from fear, from longing, from the ache you care. Evelyn's throat tightened painfully. That child, the shadow child, what does it want now? Alistair slowed slightly, his voice turning soft, almost mournful. It has only one desire, she swallowed. What? To become whole. A cold wave passed through her bones. But I'm whole, she whispered. Exactly, his voice darkened. And for it to become whole, you cannot remain. Evelyn stumbled. Alistair caught her instantly, his arms steady around her. "Don't be afraid," he murmured near her ear, a whisper warm enough to melt her fear for a heartbeat. "I won't let it claim you. I've waited too long for you." Her breath caught. "Waited? For me?" He didn't answer with words, but his fingers tightened around hers, a silent confession. The wind shifted, carrying a chilling echo through the forest. "Evelyn." She froze. It was her own voice, broken, soft, echoing from the dark. "Alistair," she whispered urgently. "It just said my name." He inhaled sharply. "It's trying to reach you. It remembers you too." The echo came again, closer this time. "Evelyn, why did you leave me?" Her knees weakened. Her breath shuddered. "That's not me," she said, trembling. "That's not my voice." "It's not your present voice," Alistair murmured. "It's the voice you left behind the night you crossed, the fear you abandoned." Tears filled her eyes. "I didn't abandon anything." "Yes," he countered softly. "You did. You abandoned the part of you that was lost. And that part has been wandering ever since." A slow, soft rustle pressed against their backs, like fabric sliding against bark, or like a small hand brushing a tree trunk for balance. Evelyn's heart seized. "Alistair, don't look," he whispered. But the air tightened, the shadows thickened, and the echo came again, fractured, trembling, heartbreakingly familiar. "Evelyn, come back." She couldn't help it. Her body turned before her mind could stop it, slowly, helplessly, toward the voice, toward the shadow. Alistair shouted her name, but too late. Evelyn saw it, just for a heartbeat, just enough to steal the air from her lungs. A small figure stood between the trees. Not fully formed, not fully flesh, but unmistakably shaped from her own childhood silhouette. Not a monster, not a creature, not even a threat. A little girl, her, with hollow eyes and a soft, trembling voice. "Why didn't you take me with you?" The forest went black. The world did not end when Evelyn turned, but it changed. The darkness didn't swallow her. The trees didn't twist into monstrous shapes. The air didn't tear open. Instead, there she stood, a small girl, no older than 6 or 7, barefoot, hair tangled softly like a forgotten breeze. Eyes wide, shimmering, and impossibly sad. Not evil, not cruel, not dangerous, just abandoned. Evelyn's breath didn't stop from fear. It stopped from recognition, because she knew this girl. Not from memory, not from dreams, from the ache she had carried her entire life without knowing why. The little shadow child stepped forward, but her feet made no sound. Her form flickered gently, like candlelight seen through glass. A child made of longing, not darkness. "Evelyn." Her tiny voice quivered, fragile as a cracked bell. "Why didn't you take me with you?" Tears blurred Evelyn's sight. I didn't know," she whispered. Her voice cracked, unfamiliar in its rawness. "I didn't know I left anything behind." The child tilted her head. "But you did." A soft wind moved through the forest, wrapping the air in a strange, aching stillness. Evelyn felt Alistair appear beside her, silent, steady, protective. But he didn't pull her away. He understood. This moment wasn't danger, it was truth. The shadow child's small fingers curled at her sides. "You were scared," she said. "You were lonely. You wanted someone to come for you, and you found a door." Her eyes glowed faintly with soft silver light. "But I couldn't follow." Evelyn's heart sank painfully, like a stone slipping into deep water. "I didn't know," she whispered again, and she meant it with her entire soul. The little girl's expression didn't harden, it broke. A single tear slid down her tiny cheek, shimmering like liquid moonlight. "You didn't hear me." Her voice trembled. "You didn't hear me calling your name." Evelyn fell to her knees without realizing, hands trembling as she reached out, not touching, only offering. "I hear you now." The child blinked, startled, as if no one had spoken to her gently in a very, very long time. The forest softened around them. No threat, just grief, just memory, just two versions of the same soul recognizing each other across time. Alistair knelt behind Evelyn, his hand resting lightly on her shoulder, grounding her, warm and steady. "This is the part of you," he murmured softly, near her ear, "that was left wandering when you crossed to my realm. Not darkness, not danger, just a child who didn't understand why she was suddenly alone." Evelyn's tears fell freely now. The shadow child stepped closer, her small face trembling. "I missed you," she whispered. Evelyn's chest ached so deeply it felt like breaking open. "I missed you too," she said, even though she had never known she was missing anyone at all. A warmth spread through the forest, a soft golden hum that wrapped around them like a blanket of early dawn. The shadow child shimmered. Her form brightened, not violently, beautifully, as if her sadness, once seen, was finally beginning to heal. She reached out a trembling hand, small, flickering, unsure, and Evelyn lifted her own slowly, gently, tenderly. Their fingers didn't touch, but the space between them glowed, a connection forming, a wound recognizing its cure. A child finding the adult she grew into. Alistair's voice was soft, reverent. "She is your forgotten fear, Evelyn. Not your enemy, not your replacement, only your shadow longing to come home." Evelyn looked at the trembling child. "Do you want to come home?" she asked, voice shaking. The little girl nodded, a tiny broken motion filled with hope. But before Evelyn could reach further, a faint tremor passed through the forest. A warmth spread through the forest, a soft golden hum that wrapped around them like a blanket of early dawn. The shadow child shimmered. Her form brightened, not violently, beautifully, as if her sadness, once seen, was finally beginning to heal. She reached out a trembling hand, small, flickering, unsure, and Evelyn lifted her own slowly, gently, tenderly. Their fingers didn't touch, but the space between them glowed, a connection forming, a wound recognizing its cure. A child finding the adult she grew into. Alistair's voice was soft, reverent. "She is your forgotten fear, Evelyn. Not your enemy, not your replacement, only your shadow longing to come home." Evelyn looked at the trembling child. "Do you want to come home?" she asked, voice shaking. The little girl nodded, a tiny broken motion filled with hope. But before Evelyn could reach further, a faint tremor passed through the forest. Not harsh, not violent, but enough to remind them this world was not stable. This connection was delicate, and something else, something quieter, older, was still watching. The shadow child flinched and stepped back. "No, wait," Evelyn cried. But the girl's form flickered again, fading like a memory slipping underwater. "I'll find you again," her tiny voice trembled. "If you keep calling." And she dissolved into soft, silver mist. Evelyn choked on a sob, reaching into emptiness. Alistair caught her gently, holding her as the forest dimmed once more. "She's not lost," he whispered. "She's waiting, just like I waited." Evelyn pressed her face into his shoulder, tears slipping silently. "But I don't want her to be alone anymore," she whispered. "You won't let her be," Alistair murmured. "That's why she can never hurt you." The forest exhaled around them, soft and sad and strangely beautiful, because now the shadows were not enemies. The forest did not return to normal after the shadow child vanished into silver mist. Instead, everything held a soft vibration, like a world still echoing with a truth it had waited years to speak. Evelyn stayed very still in Alistair's arms, her breath worn against his shoulder. She wasn't shaking from fear now, but from understanding. Something in her life made sense in a way nothing ever had. Not fully, not clearly, but a beginning had been made. Slowly, gently, Alistair pulled back to look at her. His eyes shimmered with a tenderness that softened the sharp lines of his face. "Evelyn." His voice was quiet, almost reverent. "You saw her, and you didn't turn away." Evelyn wiped her cheeks with trembling fingers. "I couldn't. She looked so lost." "Because she was," he said softly, "and because you were." Evelyn swallowed a sob that tightened her throat. "I didn't know I left her behind," she whispered. "I didn't know any part of me stayed here." Alistair brushed a strand of hair behind her ear, the gesture warm and steady. "No one knows what they leave behind in dreams," he murmured, "especially children. They wander without rules. They cross places adults no longer remember how to reach." She closed her eyes, letting his words settle. When she opened them again, the forest had grown brighter, as if the truth she had just accepted had lifted a veil from the land itself. The silver leaves shimmered more gently, less like warning and more like welcome. "Alistair?" She hesitated. "Is she alive?" He considered this, searching for the right words. "She is not alive the way you are," he said finally, "and not gone the way dreams fade. She is the memory of a fear you forgot, and the longing of a child who needed comfort." Evelyn felt her heart twist with compassion. "I want her to be safe," she whispered. "I want her to come home." A faint smile touched his lips, tender, sorrowful, proud. Alistair brushed a strand of hair behind her ear, the gesture warm and steady. "No one knows what they leave behind in dreams," he murmured, "especially children. They wander without rules. They cross places adults no longer remember how to reach." She closed her eyes, letting his words settle. When she opened them again, the forest had grown brighter, as if the truth she had just accepted had lifted a veil from the land itself. The silver leaves shimmered more gently, less like warning and more like welcome. "Alistair?" She hesitated. "Is she alive?" He considered this, searching for the right words. "She is not alive the way you are," he said finally, "and not gone the way dreams fade. She is the memory of a fear you forgot, and the longing of a child who needed comfort." Evelyn felt her heart twist with compassion. "I want her to be safe," she whispered. "I want her to come home." A faint smile touched his lips, tender, sorrowful, proud. "She will, but first." His gaze shifted toward the deeper forest, where the trees gathered more closely and the air glowed faintly gold. "You must remember what happened the night she was created." Evelyn's breath stopped. "The first memory," she whispered. "Yes." The forest responded to the words. Leaves shivered. The light grew warmer. The ground beneath them rippled, as if awakening. Alistair extended his hand. "There is a place," he said gently, "where the dream you entered long ago still lingers, frozen, waiting, just as you left it." Evelyn hesitated, not from fear, but from the weight of what she was about to face. "What if I don't remember?" she murmured. "You will," Alistair said. "Memory does not disappear, Evelyn. It only hides behind the parts of us still learning to understand." She took his hand, Warm, firm, familiar. As soon as their fingers intertwined, the forest around them shifted again, like curtains drawing apart in a grand, slow-motion reveal. The trees parted into a narrow path of golden light. The air hummed with something ancient, something soft. Evelyn felt her heartbeat pick up, not from dread, but anticipation. "Alistair, what will I find there?" He looked at her, and something in his gaze held both sorrow and hope. "You will find the moment you needed someone," he said gently, "and you will find the moment I first heard you call my name." Evelyn's eyes widened. "But I didn't speak." "No," he whispered, "you felt." And dreams listen to feelings before they listen to words. He led her forward, each step dissolving the old forest into warm, glowing haze. A gentle wind brushed past them, carrying the scent of something familiar. Evelyn froze. It was the scent of her childhood blanket, warm cotton. A hint of lavender from her mother's hands, the soft, safe smell of nights before fear existed. Her chest tightened painfully. "Alistair," her voice broke. This is me." He squeezed her hand. "Yes, the part of you that was most human, most fragile, most in need of love." A tear slid down her cheek. "And that's when you found me?" she whispered. Alistair stopped walking, turned to face her, held her eyes with an intensity that shook something inside her free. "No," he said quietly. "I found you before that," her breath caught. "Before I entered the dream?" "Yes." The air pulsed, the path brightened. Evelyn stared at him, stunned. "How?" she whispered. Alistair's expression softened into something achingly vulnerable. "Because, Evelyn," he traced his thumb gently across her knuckles, "I existed in the quiet spaces of your heart long before I had a name." The world around them glowed brighter, the entrance to her first memory opening just ahead. Alistair lifted her hand to his chest, and beneath his palm, she felt a heartbeat, real, solid, impossible. "You didn't create me," he whispered. "You called me from the part of yourself that refused to give up hope." Evelyn's tears fell freely. "And now," he said, "we go back to the moment where everything began." Together, they stepped into the golden light. The golden path unfolded before Evelyn like a ribbon of soft light, warm beneath her feet, despite the surreal glow surrounding it. The deeper she walked into this place, the stronger the ache in her chest grew, not painful, not frightening, but familiar, like a song she had heard long ago and forgotten she loved. Alistair walked beside her without speaking. He didn't need to. The silence between them wasn't empty. It was full of meaning, full of waiting. As they reached a clearing, the forest opened into a wide, shimmering space. The ground glowed with pale gold. The air sparkled softly like dust caught in morning sunlight. At the center of the clearing stood a door, not attached to any wall, not part of any structure, just a single wooden door, old, small, and painted the color of childhood skies. Evelyn felt her breath catch. "I know this," she whispered. Alistair nodded. "You should." The door was familiar, heartbreakingly so. It looked exactly like the door to her childhood bedroom, the one her mother used to paint a new color every spring, the one Evelyn used to hide behind when thunderstorms frightened her. She stepped closer, her fingers trembling as she reached for the small golden knob. As soon as her fingertips brushed the surface, a memory flickered, like an old film reel stuttering into motion. A soft cry. A little girl. A dark night. A fever. A whisper, not into the air, but into the heart. She gasped, stepping back. Alistair's hand gently steadied her. "Don't be afraid," he murmured. You're only remembering. Evelyn blinked away tears. What happened that night? She whispered. Alistair's expression softened, a quiet sadness folding into his features. You were crying, he said, not out loud, but inside yourself. A loneliness deeper than any child should ever feel. He took a slow breath. Your world felt too heavy, and when the fever blurred your waking mind, your heart reached outward, searching for something that could comfort you. Evelyn stared at the door, trembling. That's when I found you, he said. Her heartbeat stuttered. I created you? He shook his head gently. No, you didn't create me. His eyes held hers with luminous sincerity. You awakened me. The clearing brightened at his words, as if agreeing. The dream realm had always existed, Alistair continued softly. But it was silent, empty, without form, until you reached in with a heart full of longing, and something inside that silence recognized you. Evelyn swallowed. What recognized me? A part of the dream that wanted to understand what longing felt like. He looked away, as if reliving a moment older than time. That part became me. Evelyn's eyes filled again. You were born because I was lonely? She whispered. No, Alistair said gently. I was born because you hoped. The words struck her like a warm light breaking through clouds. And what about the shadow child? She asked, voice trembling. Alistair exhaled slowly. When you crossed, you left behind a fear you couldn't carry. He hesitated. Fear always tries to survive, so it formed its own echo. Evelyn looked again at the small blue door, her past. What will I see if I open it? Alistair stepped closer, lowering his forehead to hers for a brief, tender moment. You will see the night you first called me, he whispered, and the night she was left behind. Evelyn's breath caught in her throat. Fear fluttered in her stomach, soft but real. I'm scared, she whispered. You should be, he said softly. Not of what's behind the door, but of how much it will change. He took her hand, warm, steady, unshaking. But I'll be with you. Evelyn closed her eyes, inhaled slowly, exhaled shakily. Then she nodded. Alistair stepped aside, letting her face the door alone, but close enough that she could feel his presence like a warm shadow behind her. Evelyn lifted her hand. Her fingers touched the golden knob. The door glowed. Light poured from the edges. Soft, warm, like a memory waking up after years of sleep. She turned the knob. The door opened, and the past she had forgotten rushed out to meet her. Light poured toward Evelyn like a tide, not blinding, not harsh, but warm, golden, gentle, like the last ray of sunset falling across a child's pillow. As she stepped through the small blue door, the world changed quietly around her. A bedroom took shape, soft, small, familiar in ways she could not explain until her heart began to ache. Stuffed toys sat slumped against a tiny shelf. A nightlight glowed like a captured star. A blanket decorated with faded moons lay rumpled on a small bed. The wallpaper, white with tiny lavender dots, felt like the breath of a memory she had forgotten she ever lived. Evelyn's lips parted. This is my room. Alistair stood silently behind her, not intruding, not disturbing, just present, steady, warm like a shadow of reassurance. Yes, he said softly. The night it all began. Evelyn took slow steps toward the bed, her hands trembling as they brushed against old wooden corners. The texture smooth from the touch of small fingers, she could no longer remember using. On the bed, curled into herself, knees to chest, cheeks flushed with fever, lay a little girl. Herself. Tiny, frightened, shivering under the soft blanket. Evelyn gasped, a broken sound escaping her throat. "That's me." Alistair nodded. "You were 7. Her heart squeezed painfully. "She looks so scared," Evelyn whispered, her voice cracking. "She was," Alistair said gently, "but not of the dark." "Then of what?" Evelyn asked, barely breathing. "Of being left alone inside it." Evelyn felt the words pierce something deep inside her. The child's tiny chest rose and fell in uneven breaths. Tears slipped silently down her little cheeks. Her small hand clutched the side of the bed, as if reaching for someone who wasn't there. Then Evelyn heard it, a tiny sound, a soft whimper, and then a whisper so light it barely touched the air. "Please, someone, please." Evelyn's knees weakened. She pressed a hand to her mouth. "I didn't know," she whispered through tears. "I don't remember crying for help." "You didn't cry with your voice," Alistair murmured. "You cried with your heart." Evelyn turned to him, tears glistening. What happened next? Alistair stepped closer, not touching, but close enough that she felt steadiness radiate from him. "Your fear became too heavy for your dreaming mind," he said softly. "So it reached outward, past your room, past your world, past every place a child should be able to reach." The room dimmed slightly, not darker, just deeper, as though the moment were thickening around them. And when your heart reached into the dream realm, Alistair's voice softened, almost breaking. "I felt you." Evelyn stared at him. "You were already there?" "I was unformed," he said, "a presence without shape, a thought without identity, a silence waiting to be something." He looked at the child again, his expression filled with an aching tenderness. "But when you reached out in fear, I answered." The little Evelyn on the bed shuddered, her tiny body glowing faintly with a pale silver shimmer. A sign she was crossing worlds, a sign she was stepping into the dream. And then her small shadow separated, pulled gently away from her body, as if a soft wind lifted something too delicate to notice until it was gone. The shadow child formed, small, frightened, eyes wide with longing. Evelyn gasped. "That's when she, my shadow, was created." "Yes," Alistair whispered. "But she didn't understand," he continued. "She thought you had left her behind." He paused. "And in a way, you had." Evelyn's tears streamed freely now. "But I didn't mean to," she whispered. Alistair stepped closer, voice warm. "I know. You were a child. You needed comfort, and you found me." A soft glow formed in the room, as if Evelyn could see the moment she first saw him in that dream. A tall, shimmering figure made of soft silver and warmth, forming slowly from the glowing air. Alistair's first shape, a beginning. Evelyn watched, breath trembling, as the child her looked up, fear fading, hope flickering. Something gentle taking its place. "You came to me," she whispered. "I was born into your dream," he said, "and I have never stopped answering you." The shadow child watched from the corner, silent, sad, waiting. Understanding settled over Evelyn like a soft blanket. One child called for help and was answered. The other child never stopped calling and was never heard. Evelyn swallowed hard. "No wonder she's hurting," she whispered. "She thought I chose someone else." Alistair's voice was quiet. "She thought you forgot her." Evelyn wiped her tears, resolve slowly forming beneath the heartbreak. "Then I'll find her," she said, "and I'll bring her home." Alistair's eyes softened with something like pride and something deeper. "You already have," he murmured. "She returned the moment you saw her." Evelyn looked at him through trembling breath. "And now? What happens next?" Alistair's voice lowered, steady, warm, honest. "Now the dream begins to change, because you are finally whole enough to walk through it with open eyes." The little version of her shimmered, fading gently back into light. The door behind them dissolved, and the path ahead brightened. When the memory faded into golden mist, Evelyn didn't step forward immediately. She stood very still, letting the light settle around her like delicate dust. Her breathing was shallow, careful, as if a single deeper breath might shatter the fragile truth she had just witnessed. Alistair remained close, not touching, not urging her, just present. "Are you all right?" he asked softly. She nodded, though her voice trembled. "I didn't know there was so much sadness inside me," she whispered, "even as a child." Alistair's eyes softened. "Children feel everything too deeply," he said. "When their hearts are pure, even small fears become storms." Evelyn looked at the path ahead, a soft, glowing road stretching deeper into the dream forest. The trees whispered gently as a warm breeze drifted through them, carrying tiny sparks of golden light that brushed against her skin like feathers. "Where does this go?" she asked. "Forward," Alistair replied, "into who you are becoming." Evelyn hesitated. "And the shadow child? She will follow?" A faint smile touched Alistair's lips. Not sad, not fearful, but grateful. "She doesn't follow," he said. "She looks for you." Evelyn's chest tightened. "I don't want her to be afraid anymore." "You're already healing her," Alistair said gently. "She is the part of you that only wanted to be seen." A single tear slid down Evelyn's cheek. "Then show me," she whispered. "What comes next?" Alistair extended his hand. This time, she didn't hesitate. When their fingers intertwined, the forest brightened. Not dramatically, but tenderly, as though the world were smiling at them. They walked together along the golden path, the light humming beneath their feet. Every step felt softer, every breath felt deeper, as though the dream itself had shifted from something mysterious into something welcoming. Evelyn finally asked, "Alistair, when I came here as a child, why did the dream respond to me at all?" He looked at her with a gentleness that warmed her entire being. "Because you were the first in a very long time," he whispered, "who entered the dream not seeking escape, but seeking comfort." Her eyes widened slightly. "And that made a difference?" "All the difference." He paused, then added, "The dream realm answers those who feel, not those who fear. Your loneliness woke me, but your longing shaped me." Evelyn felt her breath tremble. "And now," she whispered, "what shapes you now?" Alistair's steps slowed. He turned to face her fully. Eyes luminous, soft, impossibly tender. "You do." The words flowed through her, warm and steady, settling into the spaces she never knew were empty. But before she could speak, the path shifted beneath them, gently, like the inhale before a revelation. The air shimmered, the trees bowed slightly. A soft golden doorway formed out of light ahead of them. Evelyn's heart stumbled. What is that?" Alistair looked at the doorway with a reverence that made the world quieter. "That," he said softly, "is where your heart split. Not in pain, but in possibility." Evelyn swallowed. "And if I walk through it?" "Then you will see," he said, "the moment your destiny tied itself to mine." She stared at the glowing doorway. It pulsed warmly, invitingly, not with force, but with a gentle promise. She took a breath. Alistair stepped beside her, close enough that she felt his warmth through the dream light. "Will it hurt?" she asked softly. "No," he murmured, "but it will change you." Evelyn lifted her chin, steadying herself. "I want to know," she whispered. "All of it." And with Alistair beside her, she stepped into the next memory, the one that would reveal why he was tied to her future, long before she ever dreamed of him. The golden doorway Evelyn stepped into did not open into a room or a forest or any memory she recognized. It opened into light, soft, endless, shimmering light, as gentle as breath, as warm as a held hand, as familiar as a heartbeat heard in sleep. Evelyn felt no fear now, only quiet certainty. Alistair stood beside her, but he didn't lead. He simply walked with her, as if to remind her, "This is your story, your dream, your truth." As the light settled, a scene slowly formed. A sky before dawn, a field of tall grass moving like waves, a little girl, the shadow child, sitting at the edge of the field, hugging her knees, looking toward the rising horizon. Evelyn inhaled sharply. "She's waiting," she whispered. Alistair nodded. "She always was." Evelyn approached her gently. The child didn't turn yet, but her little shoulders trembled, not with fear, but with hope. Evelyn knelt beside her. "Hey," she whispered. "I came back." The child turned, and this time, her eyes weren't hollow. They were full, shining, teary, alive. "You remembered me." "I will never forget you again," Evelyn said. "You are part of me, the part that needed love." The shadow child reached out a small hand. Evelyn took it, and in that moment, something beautiful happened. The child glowed softly, a warm silver light blooming around her. She wasn't dissolving. She wasn't fading. She was becoming whole. "I'm not alone anymore," the little girl whispered. "No," Evelyn said, with a trembling smile. "You're home now." The child leaned forward and gently merged into Evelyn's chest like warm light sinking into a heart. A soft hum passed through the world. The sky brightened, the field shimmered, and Evelyn felt herself becoming complete. For the first time in her life, she felt whole. When she turned, Alistair was watching her with an expression she had never seen before, a mixture of pride, longing, and quiet sadness. "You're not broken anymore," he murmured. "You walk the dream, not as someone lost, but someone found." Evelyn stepped closer. "What happens now?" she asked softly. Alistair held her gaze, and his voice grew tremblingly sincere. "Now the dream releases you." Her breath caught. "Releases me?" "Yes," he whispered. "The dream brought us together because you needed me. But now you have healed the part of yourself that called out for me in the dark." Evelyn felt her heart twist painfully. "You mean this is goodbye?" Alistair closed his eyes briefly. "No," he said softly. "It is the beginning of your awakening." She shook her head, tears forming. "But I don't want to lose you." He stepped close enough for her to feel the warmth that was almost real. "You won't," he whispered. "Because now that you are whole, your dream is no longer a place of fear. It is a place of choice." Evelyn's eyes widened. "Choice?" Alistair nodded. "You may return to your world stronger than before, or you may choose to keep me with you, not as a dream, but as something more." Her breath trembled. "How?" Alistair's form shimmered, not fading, but reappearing, but changing, becoming more defined, more real, more human. Because when you healed yourself, he whispered, you gave me the last piece I needed to exist. Evelyn stepped closer, tears falling freely now. You're real? Becoming, he said, if you choose me. Evelyn touched his face, and this time, her fingers didn't pass through light. They touched skin, warm, steady, alive. A soft sob escaped her. Alistair? He held her hand to his cheek. Evelyn, my world formed because you dreamed, but my heart formed because you loved. The dawn behind them brightened, a warm, rising sun spreading across the field. A sign, a choice. He reached out his hand. If you wake now, he whispered, I will fade to where dream beings rest. But if you stay, you give me the last breath I need to become real. Evelyn's chest shook. What do you want? She whispered. He smiled, soft, tender, endless. You, he said, in any world you choose. A single tear slid down her cheek, and with trembling breath, Evelyn placed her hand in his. I choose you. Alistair exhaled, a breath of relief, warmth, and life. The dream world glowed bright, not dissolving, not ending, transforming. The field around them shimmered into a soft sunrise. Alistair's body grew solid, his heartbeat grew strong, his presence grew real. Evelyn leaned into him, and he wrapped his arms around her, warm, steady, alive. I'm here, he whispered against her hair. In your world, in mine, in every dream you choose to walk. Evelyn closed her eyes. For the first time, the dream didn't pull her away and didn't trap her. It embraced her. Two worlds finally touching, two souls finally choosing. And as the light rose around them, Evelyn realized this wasn't the end. It was the beginning of a new story. A story where she was no longer afraid, where she was whole, where love, real or dream, was entirely her choice, and she chose Alistair